Hello. I met Lisa in the fall of 2007, and from the very first conversation, I knew my life was about to change. It happened at a little coffee shop downtown, the kind of place with uneven wooden tables and a faint smell of cinnamon always hanging in the air. I was supposed to meet a friend, but he canceled last minute. Lisa was at the table next to mine, flipping through a thick study book, frustration written all over her face. She sighed loudly, ran a hand through her dark brown hair, and then turned to me. "Do you happen to have a pen?" Mine just died on me. I did. And that one small request turned into a 2-hour conversation. We talked about everything, our favorite childhood movies, weird food combinations we loved. She was obsessed with peanut butter and banana sandwiches, and how neither of us really knew what we wanted to do with our lives yet. She was studying for an exam she wasn't even sure she wanted to take. I was stuck in a job I liked but didn't love. It was effortless, easy, like talking to someone I had known forever. By the time we left, the sun had gone down, and I had forgotten all about the coffee I had barely touched. But I hadn't forgotten Lisa. Our first official date was just as unplanned as the way we met. I ran into her at a bookstore a week later, and instead of just saying hi, I asked her to get dinner with me on the spot. She hesitated for a second, something I later learned she always did when she was caught off guard, then grinned. Why not? That's how we always were, spontaneous, unstructured, living in the moment. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. It wasn't some grand, elaborate gesture. It was just us, standing outside her apartment in the middle of a rainstorm because I was too nervous to wait any longer. I had all these romantic lines prepared, but the second she opened the door, I panicked and blurted, "Marry me." She burst out laughing. "Are you serious?" I nodded. Then she jumped into my arms, kissed me, and whispered, "Of course, you idiot." That was Lisa, full of life, unpredictable, and always keeping me on my toes. Our wedding was small, nothing flashy, just family and close friends. We didn't care about expensive decorations or a 5-star venue. We just wanted to be together. And for the first few years, life was exactly how I always imagined it would be. Marriage with Lisa was never boring. From the moment we said our vows, life became a series of adventures, some planned, most completely spontaneous. We were the kind of couple that made last-minute road trips just to chase a sunset, who stayed up late on a weeknight watching old movies, knowing we'd both regret it at work the next morning. We moved into a cozy 2-bedroom house just outside the city. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was ours, warm, filled with little touches that made it home. Lisa had a knack for decorating, always rearranging furniture or bringing home random thrift store finds that somehow fit perfectly. I used to joke that I never knew what the house would look like when I got home from work. One day, our living room was a simple modern space. The next, it looked like a bohemian artist's loft. But that was Lisa, always changing, always full of ideas. I worked in IT, a stable job that I enjoyed, but she was the dreamer between us. Lisa started as a graphic designer, but quickly realized she didn't like working under someone else's vision. So, after a few years, she took the leap and started her own freelance business. It was a slow climb, but I supported her every step of the way. She'd sit at the kitchen table, sketching ideas on her tablet, occasionally looking up to ask my opinion, even though we both knew she'd do whatever she wanted in the end. Evenings were our time together. We had this unspoken rule, no work talk after dinner. Instead, we'd cook together, laughing as she always tried to sneak extra spice into the food, claiming I was afraid of flavor. We'd eat on the couch more often than the dining table, watching whatever show we were obsessed with that month. Lisa would steal my blanket, my socks, and half my food, but I never minded. It was just us. Our friends would always say we were that couple, the fun ones, the ones who made marriage look easy. We hosted game nights, took on ridiculous home projects, and spent weekends exploring new restaurants or hiking trails. Lisa had this way of making even the simplest moments feel like an adventure. We talked about having kids, but we never rushed it. "We have time," Lisa would say, and I always agreed. We were happy, just the two of us, and I figured we'd know when the time was right. Looking back, those years felt perfect, like a dream I never wanted to wake up from. If I had known what was coming, maybe I would have held on to those moments a little tighter. If I had to describe our life in one word, I'd say it was comfortable. Not in a boring way, but in the sense that Lisa and I had settled into a rhythm that just worked. We knew each other's quirks, our little routines, and the things that made the other tick. Every morning, Lisa was the first to wake up. She was one of those rare people who didn't need an alarm, her body just knew when to get up. She'd make coffee, sit by the window with her sketch pad, and start her day quietly. I, on the other hand, needed 2 alarms and at least 10 minutes of staring at the ceiling before I could even function. By the time I got to the kitchen, Lisa would already be halfway through her coffee, scrolling through her emails or making notes for her projects. Even though she worked from home, Lisa never let herself fall into the trap of lounging around all day. She got dressed like she was going to an office, kept a strict schedule, and always had some new client or project she was excited about. She was good at what she did, and over the years, her business grew enough that she didn't have to take on small gigs anymore. She could be picky, choosing only the jobs that inspired her. I loved that about her. She had ambition, but she never let it consume her. Work never got in the way of our life together. Weekends were sacred. Saturday mornings were spent at the farmer's market, where Lisa would spend way too much money on organic vegetables and fresh flowers that would die within a week. She had a soft spot for small businesses, always insisting we try new local cafes or shops instead of going to the big chains. Sundays were our lazy days, pancakes in the morning, long walks in the park, and movie marathons that usually ended with Lisa falling asleep halfway through. We took vacations when we could, but we weren't the type to plan extravagant trips. Instead, we'd hop in the car and drive, sometimes with a destination in mind, sometimes just to see where the road took us. Some of my favorite memories are from those trips, singing off-key to old songs, stopping at random diners, and watching Lisa's eyes light up every time we found a beautiful view. Life was good. More than good. It was everything I had ever wanted. And the best part? I truly believed Lisa felt the same way. I wish I could go back to those days, back to the time when I thought we were untouchable. Back when I thought our love was something solid, unshakable. But no matter how perfect something seems, cracks can form where you least expect them. Looking back, I wonder how long the signs had been there before I started noticing them. It's strange how easy it is to ignore little things when you trust someone completely. How many times had I brushed off something odd, something that didn't quite fit, just because I couldn't imagine Lisa being anything but faithful? The first time I felt it, that nagging feeling that something wasn't right, was on a random Tuesday evening. Lisa had always been good at keeping her work separate from our time together, but that night, she was glued to her phone. Not in the usual way, scrolling through social media or responding to client emails. No, this was different. She was texting someone, and every time I looked over, she angled the screen away. I didn't say anything at first. I told myself I was being paranoid. But then, over the next few weeks, I started noticing other things. Lisa, who used to always be up before me, suddenly started sleeping in more. She'd wake up late, groggy, as if she had been up all night. Some mornings, I'd wake up to find her not in bed at all. She'd claim she had trouble sleeping and went to the couch to read. Her work schedule changed, too. She started taking on more evening projects, ones that required her to be on calls with clients at odd hours. Sometimes, I'd hear her laughing softly from her office, but when I'd peek in, she'd quickly close her laptop or switch the screen. Then there were the new habits. Lisa had never been one for perfume. She always said she preferred smelling natural. But suddenly, she had a new bottle on her dresser, an expensive one. I complimented it the first time I noticed, and she smiled, brushing it off as just something she picked up. Then, there was the gym. Lisa had never been obsessed with fitness, but she suddenly started going 5 times a week. She even bought new workout clothes, ones that hugged her body a little too perfectly. I joked about how dedicated she had become, but she just laughed and said she wanted to feel healthier. But the thing that really got to me the moment I knew, deep down, that something was off, was her phone. We had always been open with each other's devices. There was never any reason to hide anything. But one evening, when she was in the shower, her phone lit up next to me on the couch. A message preview popped up, but the contact name was just an emoji. A simple black heart. Something in me snapped. I reached for the phone, my heart hammering in my chest. But just as I was about to pick it up, the screen locked itself. I hesitated. A part of me didn't want to be that guy, the guy who snoops through his wife's phone because he suddenly can't trust her. So I left it. But from that moment on, the doubt had taken root. And once doubt creeps in, it doesn't leave. Once the doubt was there, I couldn't ignore it. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch, a splinter buried too deep to pull out. Every little thing Lisa did that seemed even remotely off sent my mind spiraling. And the worst part? I couldn't talk to her about it. Lisa wasn't dumb. If I confronted her too soon, she'd shut it down, call me paranoid, maybe even turn it around on me. I wasn't ready for that. I needed to be sure. So instead, I watched. It was subtle at first. I started paying closer attention to her schedule. Lisa always had a routine, but now it was shifting. She started going out more, meeting up with friends I had never heard of, or suddenly having client meetings that lasted way longer than they should. Her phone was always with her now. Before, she used to leave it lying around, charging on the counter, sometimes even forgetting where she put it. But lately, it was always face down or tucked away in her pocket. She'd even take it with her into the bathroom. One night, while she was in the shower, I noticed her Apple Watch sitting on the nightstand. My heart was pounding as I picked it up. I knew I shouldn't. I had never snooped before, but something in me needed to know. I tapped the screen, scrolling through recent notifications. Most were normal, emails, messages from a group chat, a few reminders. But then I saw it. A text from the same contact with the black heart emoji. I can't stop thinking about today. Same time tomorrow. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands were shaking as I put the watch back exactly how I found it. I had proof. Not enough to confront her, but enough to know I wasn't crazy. For the next few days, I was trapped in my own mind. I barely spoke to Lisa, only answering when necessary, giving her short, cold responses. If she noticed, she didn't say anything. Maybe she was too distracted. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Then, one evening, she walked into the living room, dressed up in a way she hadn't in a long time. Tight dress, perfect hair, makeup just right. Going somewhere? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She smiled, adjusting an earring. Yeah, dinner with the girls. I told you about it, remember? She hadn't. But I nodded anyway. Where at? That new place downtown, the wine bar. We'll probably be out late, don't wait up. I watched her pick up her phone, glance at something, and then slip it into her purse. And then I knew. She wasn't going to dinner with friends. I had no idea where she was actually going, or who she was meeting, but I was done pretending. It was time to start finding out the truth. Lisa had never been good at lying. At least, that's what I used to believe. But lately, she had become an expert at avoiding questions, dodging eye contact, and brushing things off with a smile that no longer felt real. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it, that I was being paranoid. But the more I paid attention, the more the cracks in her story became impossible to ignore. One night, she got all dressed up. Heels, makeup, that tight red dress she used to wear on special occasions. I raised an eyebrow as she grabbed her purse. Where are you going? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Dinner with the girls, she said, flashing me a quick smile. I told you about it earlier, remember? She hadn't. Which girls? I pressed. She hesitated. Just for a second. But I caught it. Emma, Chloe, and, Sophie. She glanced at her phone, like she needed to check for confirmation. We're trying that new wine bar downtown. It sounded convincing enough. But something felt off. Lisa never hesitated when talking about her friends. She wasn't the type to forget who she was meeting. And I knew for a fact that Sophie had moved to another state months ago. Still, I forced a smile and nodded. Sounds fun. When will you be back? Not too late, she said quickly, already heading for the door. Don't wait up. I watched from the window as she got into her car and drove off. My stomach twisted. Something inside me screamed that she wasn't telling the truth. I considered following her, but what if I was wrong? What if I was just being the jealous husband, reading too much into things? I had no real proof, just gut feelings, half-truths, and little inconsistencies. So instead, I waited. She came home late, much later than she said she would. I was still awake, lying in bed, pretending to scroll through my phone when she slipped under the covers beside me. You're up late, she murmured. Couldn't sleep. I replied, not looking at her. How was dinner? Great. She yawned. We had way too much wine. I'll probably regret it in the morning. I nodded, forcing myself to stay calm. But then, as she turned her back to me and drifted off to sleep, I caught it. A faint scent clinging to her skin. Not wine. Not perfume. Cologne. A man's cologne. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight. I still didn't have proof. But at that moment, I knew Lisa was slipping away from me, and I needed to find out why. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything changed. I was in the garage, fixing up an old shelf Lisa had been asking me to throw out for months. It was busy work, something to keep my hands moving while my mind kept circling around the same thoughts. Was I imagining things? Was Lisa really cheating, or was I just seeing what I wanted to see? Then I heard my daughter calling from inside the house. Dad, can you come here for a second? Something in her voice made me put the hammer down immediately. It wasn't her usual tone. There was no casualness, no humor. It was shaky, uneasy. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked inside, finding her standing in the living room, Lisa's laptop open on the coffee table. Her face was pale, her hands clenched at her sides. "What's up?" I asked, my chest tightening. She swallowed hard, looking at me with wide, uncertain eyes. I wasn't snooping, I swear. Mom asked me to look for a file on her laptop, something for work, and I found this instead. She stepped aside, letting me see the screen. And just like that, my world ended. A video. The thumbnail alone was enough to make my stomach drop. A grainy image of Lisa in our bedroom, her hair a mess, her skin flushed. But it wasn't just Lisa in the frame. There was a man. Not me. My heart pounded in my ears as I reached for the laptop, my hands suddenly unsteady. My daughter took a step back, looking anywhere but at the screen. "I didn't watch it," she whispered. I clicked on it by accident, and when I saw what it was, she cut herself off, shaking her head. "I'm sorry, Dad." I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just stared at the screen, the cursor hovering over the play button. For weeks, I had been doubting myself, telling myself I was just being paranoid, that maybe Lisa was still the woman I thought she was. But here it was. The truth. Undeniable. Unforgivable. I forced myself to take a slow, deep breath, even as my entire body tensed with rage. I wouldn't lose control. Not in front of my daughter. I closed the laptop. "Go to your room," I said quietly. "I need a minute." She hesitated, her face filled with worry, but eventually nodded and walked away. As soon as she was gone, I picked up the laptop again. And this time, I pressed play. I sat there, staring at the laptop screen, the weight of what I had just seen pressing down on me like a vice. My breathing was slow and deliberate, the only thing keeping me from punching a hole through the wall. Lisa, my wife, in our bed, with him. I had suspected. I had doubted. I had looked for signs. But seeing it with my own eyes was something else entirely. Footsteps approached cautiously from the hallway. I didn't even look up. "Dad." My daughter's voice was quiet, careful, like she was afraid I might break. I swallowed hard and finally looked at her. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, looking as shaken as I felt. "Tell me everything," I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it wasn't really mine. She hesitated. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "I need to know." She let out a shaky breath and sat across from me, rubbing her hands over her jeans. "I told you, I wasn't snooping. Mom asked me to find a file for her, something for work. I was going through her folders, and there was this one just labeled videos. It didn't look suspicious or anything." She paused. "But when I opened it, there were a lot of them, Dad. Not just one." A cold chill ran through me. A lot of them. I forced myself to stay still, to keep my face unreadable, even as I felt something deep inside me snap. She kept talking, carefully choosing her words. I clicked on one by accident, and when I saw what it was, I didn't know what to do. I closed it right away, but then I noticed the timestamps. The videos go back months. She swallowed hard, looking at me with sympathy. "I think it's been happening for a long time." I nodded, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. Months. Lisa had been lying to me, sneaking around, filming herself with another man, all while coming home, kissing me, sleeping in our bed, acting like nothing was wrong. I exhaled sharply. "Who is he?" My daughter hesitated, then reached for the laptop. I didn't want to look too closely, but here. She clicked through a few folders, her movements hesitant, before stopping on a still frame. I forced myself to look, and there he was, younger than me, tall, fit, smug. I didn't recognize him at first, but then I did. The personal trainer from Lisa's gym. That's when the rage truly set in. I pushed back from the table, running a hand down my face. My mind raced, flashes of the past few months clicking into place, the extra gym sessions, the new workout clothes, the late nights, the distant looks, the perfume that wasn't really perfume. I had been such a fucking fool. My daughter was still watching me carefully. "Dad, what are you going to do?" I looked at her, my vision sharper than it had ever been. The anger, the betrayal, the clarity. "I'm going to make sure your mother never steps foot in this house again." I had never felt rage like this before. It wasn't just anger, it was something deeper, something primal. The kind of fury that sits heavy in your bones, that makes your vision sharpen and your pulse slow instead of race. I didn't yell. I didn't punch walls. I didn't even shake. I just knew what had to be done. Lisa came home later that evening like nothing had happened. She tossed her keys onto the counter, kicked off her shoes, and stretched like she'd just had a long, exhausting day. She didn't know I was waiting for her. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice casual as she walked into the living room. "How was your day?" I was sitting on the couch, the laptop in front of me, the screen dark for now. I didn't say anything right away. Just watched her. Lisa paused, picking up on the shift in energy. "What?" she asked, forcing a small laugh. "You're staring at me like I have two heads." I finally spoke, my voice eerily calm. "Sit down." Her smile faltered. "What's going on?" I said, "Sit down." Something in my tone made her obey. She sank onto the couch across from me, confusion flickering in her eyes. I reached forward and clicked the laptop open. The screen lit up. The video was already queued up. The still image froze on her face, her real face, the one she had when she thought no one else was watching. The face she made for him. Lisa inhaled sharply. "What the hell is this?" I didn't answer. I hit play. The room filled with her moans. The unmistakable sound of skin against skin. Of betrayal. Lisa scrambled forward, slamming the laptop shut, her face pale. "What the fuck? Where did you get that?" I leaned back, my hands clasped together. "From your laptop." "You were sloppy, Lisa." Her breathing was ragged, her hands shaking as she tried to find the right words. I can explain." "Don't." I cut her off, my voice ice cold. "Don't fucking insult me with lies. I know everything. I know about the gym trainer. I know about the months of sneaking around. I know you've been filming it." She opened her mouth, then shut it. "Good." I pulled a manila envelope from the table beside me and tossed it onto her lap. She looked down, hesitating before opening it. Her divorce papers. Her whole body stiffened. "You're divorcing me?" I tilted my head. "Did you think I'd just let this slide? That I'd beg you to stay? That I'd be too weak to leave?" Tears welled in her eyes. It was a mistake." I laughed. A real, bitter laugh. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is missing a phone call. What you did, that was a choice. Over and over again. And now, you live with the consequences." She shook her head frantically, reaching for me, but I pulled away. "Please, we can fix this." "There is no we anymore, Lisa." I stood up, looking down at her. "You're going to sign those papers. You are going to leave this house. And you are going to pay for what you did." She wiped her tears away angrily. "What do you mean, pay?" I smirked. "Oh, you'll see." Because I had spoken to my lawyer. And thanks to the evidence I had gathered, I wasn't just divorcing her. I was suing her. For emotional damages. For breach of marital contract. For every single cent she had. And I was going to make sure she walked out of this house with nothing. Lisa realized it then, realized just how badly she had fucked up. Her lips parted, but I was already walking away. I didn't need to hear her apologies. I didn't need to hear anything from her ever again. Lisa didn't go quietly. At first, she tried begging. The tears, the trembling voice, the desperate apologies. I had expected all of it. She swore it didn't mean anything, that she still loved me, that it was just a mistake. I didn't react. Then came the excuses. She tried to spin it, blaming me for being distant, for working too much, for not being the same man she married. I let her rant, let her throw out every pathetic justification she could grasp at. And when none of that worked, she turned angry. "You think you're going to ruin me?" She spat, her face red with fury. "You're not getting a goddamn cent from me. I'll fight you in court. I'll tell the judge you were abusive. I laughed. A cold, humorless laugh that shut her up instantly. "You really think you have any leverage here?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "I have videos, Lisa. Your videos of you fucking him in our bed, in our house. You want to drag this to court? Fine. Let's do it. I'll make sure everyone, your friends, your family, your clients, knows exactly what kind of woman you are." Her face drained of color. She knew she had lost. From that moment on, she stopped fighting. The divorce papers were signed within days. My lawyer made sure that, thanks to the evidence, she got nothing. No house, no savings, no alimony. She tried to move in with her AP. Turns out, he wasn't interested in playing house with her. He was just as much of a liar as she was. Once she was no longer an exciting secret, he dumped her. I heard from mutual friends that Lisa was struggling. She bounced between cheap apartments, picking up whatever freelance work she could, barely getting by. The glamorous, confident woman I had once known was gone, and I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. The last time I ever saw her was the day she came to collect the last of her things. She stood in the doorway, looking at me with hollow eyes. "Is this really it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I just stared at her. "You ended this, Lisa. Not me." She nodded slowly, like she finally understood. Then, without another word, she walked out of my life forever. And I never looked back. The first night after Lisa was officially out of my life, I sat in the living room with a drink in my hand, staring at nothing. The house felt different. Quieter. Emptier. For so long, I had lived in denial, ignoring the signs, convincing myself that our marriage was still strong, that Lisa was still the woman I fell in love with. But now, there were no more illusions. No more lies. And for the first time in months, I felt free. The divorce had been quick, brutal, and one-sided. She walked away with nothing. No house, no savings, no future with her affair partner. She had gambled everything we built, and she had lost. I didn't care what happened to her. She was no longer my problem. I focused on my life. I started going to the gym, not to impress anyone, just to feel like myself again. I went out with friends, reconnected with family, threw myself into work. Slowly, the bitterness faded. The anger stopped controlling me. I learned to enjoy the small things again. Waking up to a peaceful house, drinking coffee on the back porch, listening to music without memories of Lisa creeping in. And one day, when I least expected it, I met someone new. I won't lie and say I fell in love instantly. Trust takes time. But she was different. Genuine. Honest. Someone who made me laugh again. Who reminded me that love isn't supposed to feel like doubt. Lisa had once been my whole world. But now, she was just a lesson. A painful, necessary lesson that taught me exactly what I would never tolerate again. And as I stood on my front porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, and I would never let anyone take that from me again. Bye-bye.